Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And as we get going into the show today, we're going to go straight into music news, but it's sad music news because we got the news today that we lost Olivia Newton John. She was only 73, and it's terribly sad. What do you think, Joy?
I mean, I'm very sad. I sent it to Tim while I was working today because I saw somebody sent it to me and then, gave him a telephone. I sent it to Tim and me and Tim were instantly like, no. I mean, I didn't know if she was in bad health. I think I never even thought about it. So it would come as a shock.
Yeah, I mean, I think she'd been battling breast cancer for years.
I guess I just never knew that.
Yeah, but you don't expect it because, I mean, there's a lot of music icons that are in their 70s. Brian May's 75, Roger Taylor's 71, 72. Sammy Hagar, who's looks like he's 50 and he's 73 or 74 or something like that. Mm-hmm. You've got McCartney and Ringo are almost 18, they're all out there getting it done. And I don't know, you think of somebody at 73 these days is a relatively young age to go. It's very sad indeed.
Well, I mean, Elton John's 75. I don't know, maybe this was just because I didn't realize she was in bad health, but I've always kind of thought of Olivia Newton John as a healthy looking person. Mm-hmm. Generally, and I've never really heard, unless I missed some 70s knowledge because I wasn't born, I never really heard of her living the, hard rock style we talk about with some of our previous musicians.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I've pulled out some songs of hers that I really enjoy. And I have a couple of albums here which she features on. But first things first, I'll hand it over to you, Joy. What are some of the songs of Olivia Newton John that you really like?
So I was doing a little bit of a search, just kind of refreshing my brain on it. And I think the one that I think of when I think of her is If You Love Me, Let Me Know. Mm-hmm. That was a great song. And I would say it was covered by Elvis and Tina Turner at one point. So it's a very famous song, but I love that song. Her version is much different than Elvis's and Tina's because she has that very light sounding voice. Yeah. It gives a different air.
Yeah, her voice is incredibly distinctive, and I think she did a number of sort of cover type tunes throughout her career. But I will say my favourite Olivia Newton John song, and in fact I have the remastered set here that I got for Christmas, but it has to be Physical. The track Physical is absolutely fantastic. It has Steve Lukather on guitar, and for a pop song of that kind of era from 1981 to have such a long guitar break on it played by such a renowned session guitarist is actually quite unusual. Mm-hmm. But even outside of Steve Lukather's work on there, I just think it's a great pop song.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great pop song. The video's iconic. She looks iconic. Like you said, there's good producers and musicians on it, and it was her most known song, maybe besides Hopelessly Devoted to You, but that's from Grease. So I would say it's her biggest song.
Yeah, and in fact, I have the Grease soundtrack here as well. I was going to I pulled all the things out so we could try and celebrate her a little bit.
Do you have Xanadu there, Tim?
Yeah, I do. I've got Xanadu, the famous thing she did with Electric Light Orchestra. And how could you forget Suddenly, which is a duet with Cliff Richard? And I mean, that is such a great duet.
There was something else that came up with Cliff Richard when I was looking at her earlier. Please, Mr. Please. Mm-hmm. Apparently, it's with Cliff Richard's backing band.
Okay.
The Shadows. So that came up while I was researching as well.
Fantastic. But I mean, even if you go back to the Grease soundtrack, I mean, Summer Nights, Hopelessly Devoted to You, You're the One That I Want. I mean, it's all great music. And as I've said before, funnily enough, I've never actually seen the film Grease, but I've enjoyed this soundtrack many times, and I've seen the stage production multiple times. I saw it one time in London's West End. I missed Debbie Gibson by about that much when she was leading it. And I think it was Samantha Janus, who was the TV presenter of the time, who was playing Sandy. And, and I know the story and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know, I've just never seen the film.
I've seen it many times. Have you seen Xanadu, Tim?
Do you know what? I haven't. Again, I've enjoyed that soundtrack. That soundtrack is fantastic, but I've never seen the film.
I mean, I have to say something. I would much rather watch Grease than Xanadu. That might get me in trouble. There's probably some cult following of Xanadu, but it's not my thing. But I mean, Magic's a great song. Mm-hmm. And it's fantastic. And once again, iconic. I think one thing she did well is her music videos tend to be very distinct. And she has a very distinct look and sound about her that you instantly know it's Olivia Newton John.
Yeah, and going back to Physical, of course, the music video of that just hit just at the right time. It's got like dudes bodybuilding. I mean, she looks great. It has a very kind of, the way the color correction is done, it really pops. And it came out just as like MTV hit the market. So it visually grabbed your attention immediately. MTV needed videos to play. It was maybe seen as a little bit saucy or racy because it had all those dudes in the short bodybuilding shorts and all their muscles and all that kind of stuff.
That was in at the time in the 80s too, though, the physical kind of thing.
So I think it sort of hit the mark at the right time. And the fact that she was a great singer on that track, and the instrumentation and Steve Lukather and all that kind of stuff. And it was just perfect at that time.
Well, apparently last year was its 40th anniversary.
Yeah, and in fact, it was last year for Christmas. I got the set, and it has a DVD in here, and there's another disc of remixes and additional tracks and stuff like that.
Have you ever heard the song "Have You Never Been Mellow" by Olivia Newton-John? Mm-hmm. That's a great one, too. And apparently it was her first Grammy nomination.
Oh, wow.
Just reading that. So, yeah. I mean, it's sad to see, but I hate when people say they lived a long, good life because, it seems cliche, but she did live and do a lot of different things. So that's cool.
That's true. But equally, I wish she was still with us to tell us about cool things that she done. But anyhow, we celebrate you, Olivia Newton-John. Rest in peace, Olivia Newton-John. And you left behind a great legacy of music, and we will continue to enjoy it.
That's the great thing about art is even after you've passed, we can still listen to it, and it still brings us memories. So,
absolutely. Okay. Well, there we go. That was our music news for this week. I had other music news, but it had to be about Olivia today.
This took precedence.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's move on to the podcast. So it's my turn to pick the topic this week. Now, a little insider information for our fans. We did a record last week that didn't quite go to plan. So
first time it's ever happened.
Yeah, so we stopped the recording, we took stock of the situation, and then we recorded you a completely new episode. So when it drops in a few weeks or whenever you get it, you will never know. I did some editing on it. I flexed my editing skills, and you would never know that that's two completely separate podcasts joined together. So if you can spot the join and tell me where it is, you can win a prize, but I don't think you can.
Tim will send you a signed picture of him playing the guitar or something. Or no, what we'll do, Tim, is we'll go out by your trash can. Maybe you will just put a little peace sign up of us by the trash can and sign it and then send it off. No, your recycling bin actually is what it is. And so that'll be their reward, Tim, if they can find it. They get the recycling bin.
Something like that. But anyhow, I decided this week I would honor that failed podcast recording from last week. So I've decided to pick out a list of songs this week to discuss, and they're all songs that have the word game in the title.
People are like, what does that have to do? We were trying to play a game, everyone. That was the podcast. And it went for two people who talk about music on length for multiple weeks. We seem to forget every song we've ever known.
Yeah, I mean, like Joy and I, we get on here, we put out an arbitrary topic, we talk about music, and then invariably we're talking about gas heaters or, I don't know, sandwiches or something like that. And it just flows. Joy and I have always had a really great rapport. And even before we had a podcast, we had a great rapport. But needless to say, last week's initial recording, there was lots of ums and ahs and dead silence, and it was very
staring at each other.
Yeah, I have it in my archives. I have not deleted it.
Oh Lord!
And maybe I might release a edited highlights best of as a Christmas episode or something, assuming that you'd want to sit through that.
Yeah, I think you might make that pretty small. That goes up there with the time me and Tim had told you guys about the awkward video that we had to record with the copier being in space. Like, it was about that awkward.
It was, but the thing is about the copier video, what we had to do to camera was probably less than 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Yeah. We was at minute 55 or something of this podcast record, and I said to Joy, I said, no one's going to want to listen to this.
No, and I was sitting there thinking it too. You could see it written all around. I looked at Tim. I was like, what did we do? All right. Anyway, so songs about games. Hopefully we're better at talking about this.
Exactly. So I've gone through my iTunes library, and I've pulled out a bunch of songs which have the word game in the title. Now, I think there's some great ones in here, and I was actually surprised at how good some of these songs are. But I'm going to start off with a classic hit from 1992, and that would be Bobby Brown. 2 can play at that game.
Okay, so I know it's controversial because Bobby Brown had a lot of stuff people don't agree with, and I don't agree with a lot of stuff Bobby Brown did. And if you ever watched the documentary with him, it's obvious to me he struggled. But I love early Bobby Brown music, especially when he's with New Edition. I actually really like it.
Yeah, I mean, outside of stuff that he has got involved with, which are not cool, Bobby Brown was in an episode of Knight Rider, a season 4 episode of Knight Rider, which has a very bizarre New Edition shoe-in. Really, it adds nothing to the plot other than that they're doing their song Count Me Out and they're dancing around Kit. It adds nothing.
But you're happy it's there.
Yeah, I'm happy it's there because it's ridiculous.
I mean, that's kind of, though, that makes it even more iconic in some way. Because it's always like, when you have like a guest star or something, and they put them in there just to be a guest star, so then they stick out like a sore thumb through the entire episode. That's the best.
Yeah, and I will say, as far as New Edition is concerned, Candy Girl, as far as a pure pop song, is fantastic.
Yes, and it will be in my head for the next 6 weeks. Though I will say my favorite, what's the one I like? What's the one by New Edition? Name some New Edition songs, Tim. Apparently I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Well, Cool It Now is really good. Mm-hmm. Oh, what is the one where he's like, Reputation? Something about a Reputation?
Probably. To be honest,
doesn't matter.
It'll
come to me later.
I know Count Me Out and I know Candy Girl. They're my main 2 New Edition picks.
Okay, well, there's one by Bobby Brown where he's singing about Reputation that I can't think of off the top of my head, and if someone knows it and is screaming it, I'm sorry. That one I really like too.
Okay.
Can't think of the name of it though.
Well, I was going to say 2 can play at that game. Again, for sort of 90s pop R&B is a great track. And it was one of those songs, I know it was 92 when it came out, but it was one of those songs when I was playing in nightclubs with Guilty Party in the late 90s. It was one of those songs that house DJs would repeatedly play. So I'm very familiar with it from that era.
My prerogative, Tim. That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry, guys, everybody.
Yeah, and he's going to do what he wants to do.
I actually really like that song.
Actually, another one of my favorites by him is On Our Own, which comes from the Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack.
I was going to say, look at you, Tim. You got all the facts about Bobby Brown, and you were saying a minute ago you didn't even know anything about it.
There we are. The question I'd ask you, Joy, have you seen Ghostbusters 2?
I have. It's been years, but I've seen it.
Are you of the opinion it's very poor in comparison to the first one?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's very poor, but it's not as good.
It's like Bill Murray couldn't be bothered. And he was clearly doing it just for the cash because he was more famous by that point. And then you've got the Statue of Liberty walking across the Hudson dancing, and it's just...
There's a lot to unpack in one movie. Like I said, it's been a while. I didn't go out of my way to watch it again, but I have seen it in the past.
Yeah, I've seen the first one 200 times. I've seen the second one 3 times, twice maybe. Agreed.
And I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't know Ghostbusters by now because it's used in pop culture for like everything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love Ghostbusters. And if you've seen any of my videos or you've seen music news or anything like that, I have a Ghostbusters poster behind me.
I was going to say, there's a giant poster right behind your head.
Exactly.
All right, what's the next song, Tim?
Okay, so this is a song from 1998 from a Swedish band from Jönköping in Sweden. And this is a song called My Favorite Game.
I have no idea what any of this is.
And that's the Cardigans. I don't know if I said the Cardigans.
Oh, that makes sense. All I heard was a Swedish band and my favorite game, and I'm like, I don't know what their favorite game is. But I mean, I am aware of the Cardigans, though. That song's not. I have heard that one, but it's not like on the top of my Cardigans list.
What do you like?
I mean, they're cliche songs that everybody knows. Because the Cardigans are one of those bands that was used in like every 90s film ever, I think. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they were about that time. I mean, I like that song Love Fool. I think that's a good...
the exact song that I was thinking of.
That's a good song. And the singer from the Cardigans, Nina, she did we may have spoken about this before, but she did a version of Burning Down the House, but with Tom Jones.
Yep. That's what you were saying that. I thought that was kind of a random, because I mean, Love Fool is probably the one that I think was used in every 90s pop kind of whatever they're in a moment in a movie. I don't know. I feel like that song's been kind of overdone, but that's probably the one that I know the most. Now, where did you say they're from? Sweden? I don't know that I knew that.
Yeah, they're from Jönköping, Sweden.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're the one saying that, not me. They had that one song called Carnival that I remember. Mm-hmm. Were they pretty large in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, in that era, I mean, certainly my favorite game and Love Fool and the other track that you mentioned were ones that were around and in the charts and stuff like that.
I hate to say this because there's probably someone listening on here that's going to scream at me for my lack of cardigan knowledge, which keeps making me think of sweaters, but that's not related. Because, I mean, I know Love Fool, like I said, that's been used in every movie ever. And I've heard My Favorite Game, and then I've heard Carnival, but I kind of generally put them in like a 3-hit wonder kind of category.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I'm not a big Cardigans fan by any stretch of the imagination. As I've said before, my claim to fame is I was in a bar in Jönköping, Sweden, called Por Tapetan. I think I'm probably saying it wrong. Gilbo will correct me, but it means on the wallpaper. And it was a very hip and trendy bar in downtown Jönköping. And Nina from the Cardigans was in there with friends just having a drink because that's her hometown. And I think it was there at Christmas. And then friends I was with said, "Oh, that's Nina from the Cardigans." And I went, "Oh, look at that."
Yeah, she'd be somebody if she walked right past me. I don't know that I would know her off the top of my head.
No, but there you go. We've shared the same oxygen in a room. There we go. I'm effectively in the band at this point.
Yes, of course, Tim. That's the 17th band Tim has joined since he started this podcast. All right, what's our next song?
Okay, so this one is from 1989. And this is Chris Isaak and Wicked Game.
That's a great song. I haven't thought about that song in a while. Because from what I remember about Chris Isaak is I just remember, didn't he have very distinct hair? He almost wore it in like a pompadour.
Yeah, he had a whole sort of throwback Elvis 50s type thing going back.
Yeah, that's kind of what I remember from him. And like, it seems like every song kind of had that feel too. Like, this one's like, the world's only going to break your heart, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this song is that when this came out, we had MTV at home. We had MTV Europe, which is much the same as MTV US was at the time. However, the programming was different. It didn't carry the same program because it was targeted to the European audience. But what I found out is that they made 2 music videos for Wicked Game. Like the one for the US I think it was pretty much a standard performance video, something like that, or he's in a smoky bar or something like that. The European version of it is him and model, is it Helena Christensen?
Is that the black and white one? It's like a grayscale or something? Yeah,
and they're romping about on a beach and she's in swimwear.
It probably wasn't approved in the American world. Remember Nipplegate, Tim. We can't see any swimwear here.
Exactly. So I don't know. It's just like years after the fact. I forget where it was. The video of it came up and I was like, that's not the video for that. What's that?
I wonder how often that happens then. Because there's probably a lot of stuff like that in the height of the 80s, right? Because I will say now America's come around, I think, a little bit more, but we still have very, I think, big censorships on like major programming like ABC, CBS, that kind of thing. If you go watch, Real World on MTV, you're going to get what you get. But so I wonder if that's happened a lot. There's the American version.
Probably. I mean, I think cable, which is unregulated to some degree, has sort of put that to one side. And, internet as well, where within reason you can put up absolutely anything you want, regardless. And nobody is censoring it to any degree. But one interesting thing I was reading an article a while ago that said that sometimes when UK programming or European programming or something like that hits the United States, it has to be heavily censored for sort of sex and nudity because that is not seen as acceptable. However, when US programs hit like Scandinavia, who are very open with that kind of stuff, the people are not prudish at all, it's often censored for violence.
That's not surprising to me. I would imagine if you looked at content from different countries, you're going to see certain countries are big. You know what I mean? There's different things. I will say, whenever I was in Europe, I made an effort I bought all the Harry Potter books, the European versions instead of the American versions. So, in America, it's Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. In Europe, it's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Because philosopher is like a sorcerer because it's just like the language difference. Because when they were talking about Americans wouldn't know what a philosopher, we wouldn't think of a philosopher like that. Like, apparently in the UK, a philosopher is like a sorcerer. News to me. But anyway.
Okay.
So... Tim's like news to me, and I was from there too. I don't know. And all the artwork's different on the front. And then if you compare the verbiage, because I already had the American copy, so I thought it was cool. I was in a bookstore and made sure to get all the European copies. There's actually cuss words in the European version, even though it's a child book. You don't find them in the American version. I mean, they're not like extreme cuss words, just you know what I mean? People say explicitives occasionally, like you drop a hammer on your foot and this is what you get. But that was like a big thing. And then there's like different phrases are changed between the two because there's very British phrases versus what we would read here in America. And that actually makes sense because most of them were targeted at kids. You know what I mean? They might not get those concepts. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and isn't it the audiobook version? It's Stephen Fry does the UK ones, and it's Jim somebody who does the US ones. And I know I had the audio files that somebody gave me of the UK version featuring Stephen Fry. And I shared it with somebody I knew who was a super fan, and they were absolutely over the moon that I had access to the Stephen Fry version because maybe it's different now. You could probably get it on Audible and things like that. But a number of years back, they were like, wow, it's the UK Stephen Fry version. I can't believe it.
I just thought it was super cool. We just happened to go into a bookstore. Weirdly enough, I was in France. I wasn't even in England. But, they have an English section, and I was just going through it. I was like, oh, my God. Which, by the way, you never think about the fact that when you buy stuff like books, you then have to get it in your carry-on and get it in your bag and bring it back in. A whole set of Harry Potter books was quite heavy, but I made it work.
Well, that was the time when we went to Edinburgh. So we went up to Edinburgh. We obviously didn't rent a car. We flew up there from London. It was a short flight, 40 minutes or something like that. And I was in HMV in Edinburgh. Now, this is probably 15 years ago. And they had, which I didn't have at the time, the complete Knight Rider box set. All the episodes, all 90 episodes in a box set with bonus discs and all this kind of stuff. Now, this box is, I'm showing Joy on the camera, but, it's as wide as my computer monitor. It's a big old box, contains all these DVDs in there. So I bought it at the very end of the trip, because we stayed up there for a few days, and then we had to fly home. So I didn't want it to go in the hole because I didn't want the box to get broken. So I took it on the plane with me, but it was just so big. And it fitted in the overhead, and you're lugging this huge, heavy box around with 40 DVDs in it or whatever it was.
So similar to that, when I went to Greece, my husband, I've told many times, has a Funko Pop section. Tim's very aware of this. He found a store in Athens that had me go track down Funkos for him. And I got him 2 rare Funkos while I was there. But I was so worried that because these were the one thing I got him, and he's very particular about his collectibles. I was so worried that if I put them underneath the plane, they get crushed. The boxes would. So I carried them with me, and I didn't even fit them in the overhead bin. I actually had them underneath my seat for most of the flight, just because there was a guy that I didn't feel like fighting to get into the overhead bin. It was a whole thing. So I literally held those Funkos for the 18-hour flight back and the tiny economy size to get them back. So I was like, Charlie, you better be happy. But they made them back in one piece.
Fantastic. Now the thing is, I've maybe committed a cardinal sin with Funkos. I've got some which I've kept in the box I've got maybe 3 or 4 cats in the box. But there's a few that I've taken out the box and thrown the box because I just wanted to enjoy the Funko.
So there's 2 different types of people. Charlie, there's a few that he's let me, and I have one that's a DIY one that I painted. It's right here. He's a troll because I love it. I painted him. And then I have a bunch that I used to glitter, which Tim's seen that came out of the box. I glitter them. But I don't know if you were there that night. When we were on a Zoom with your friends for the Freak Jam, I was glittering a Funko. That was the hot topic because I was sitting there doing it on camera. But other than that, though, those are only the ones that I like. So I'll take mine out of the box. But Charlie, he's dead serious. You can't take any of his out of the box. And he takes good care. But then my friend Molly, she's a collector, and she takes them out of the box, Tim. So I think it just depends on the person.
Yeah, I mean, I've got, I bought the Brian May one. I bought 2 of them, one for in the box and one out of the box. I've got James Bond and Moonraker, Roger Moore. That one's in the box. But the one of Kit with David Hasselhoff coming out the roof, I took it out of the box because I wanted to enjoy it. I didn't feel I could enjoy it in the box.
I mean, that's fair. I think it just depends on the person. Has anyone ever caught, I guess this is flashing news. Well, after I taught Tim about Selena, the artist from the 90s who passed away, I bought Tim a Selena Funko and brought it to work for him to put in his office. Has anyone ever asked you about it?
Yeah, people ask me all the time because in my office where I work, I have a toy shelf and it has a Cylon, it has various Knight Rider cars and some other paraphernalia of things I really like. And at the very end of that is Selena, collector's edition Selena. Else. Yeah. Boxed in a Funko protector box, and it's not even on the. I had to move it over so it wouldn't get bleached by the sunlight. So it's over by my little plant, if people know my office. And I've had many people ask me about that, and then I have to explain why I have that
because it doesn't fit any of the other things in Tim's office at all. So I know but it was just funny because I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna get this for him, and then Charlie's like, I'll even give you a case to put it in. So we put it in a nice protector, and I walked in, and Tim's like, seriously. All right. Well, I guess we should get back to the topic.
Well, you know how it is.
Maybe. But anyway. Okay,
so this is from 2013, and it's Daft Punk from their album Random Access Memories. Now, this is not a single. I don't think it was a release away from the album, but this is The Game of Love.
For some reason, I did think that's the song you were going to go with, but then I remembered it was Game, so it's obvious. I think I forgot what the theme was for a minute. I mean, I love Daft Punk, and Tim has expressed his love of Daft Punk many times, I think, on the podcast. Yeah,
and I think it was Random Access Memories probably that got me super into Daft Punk. I have most of their albums, and I really love the Tron soundtrack. But I don't know. Random Access Memories is clever. They made a hip hop R&B album sort of, but it's all with real instruments. And whilst you hear maybe, I won't say it's sampled, but they've moved the stuff around. It isn't as it was played in the studio on the day. They are using drum loops, but they're using loops of a real drummer, mostly Omar Hakim, and Nathan East is playing bass. And it's got Nile Rodgers co-producing a bunch of tracks, and he co-wrote some tracks, and he's playing his famous funky guitar, the Hitmaker, on it. And I don't know, it is such a good album. And if you haven't heard Daft Punk's Random Access Memories, go and listen to it, because almost from beginning to end, it is superb. And it really does capture the essence of sort of chic and 70s kind of pop, but it has that kind of more contemporary hip hop R&B style feel about it, if you will. And it does a really good, I think, the reason why this was so popular for music, people who maybe aren't into synthesized music or house music or whatever you want to call it, whatever the term for Daft Punk, whatever you define them as, I guess electronic. Yeah, electronic. It did a really good job of taking influences from progressive rock and pop and I think almost like a disco sound, like you were saying with Chic. And they weaved it in just enough that even if you're not into electronic music, it's nice. And it's got these little samples and these little pieces. And there's a lot of collaborated people on it. And I think maybe when we did the Rolling Stone episode, I'm pretty sure we might not have talked about it. It's on the 500 greatest albums of all time by Rolling Stone easily. And I know Pharrell Williams contributed to it, which Phil will be happy to let everyone know that I spoke negatively about Pharrell Williams and saying that I don't think of him as a musician as much as a producer. And Phil, if you're listening to this,
politely sent me multiple videos of Pharrell Williams playing the drums because he's a very good drummer, everyone. I'm sorry, I did not know. But I was corrected on that one. But there's a bunch of other DJs that are on it. There's just tons of collaboration on it. And I think that that's what's cool is they took that electronic and just like added all those elements.
Yeah, and as I said, I think they tried not to use any real synthesizers. It was all quote unquote real instruments.
Yeah, and I've heard that it was like that was kind of like their conception idea. I mean, they're sampling and looping on it, but it's all for real artists, so that's pretty cool. And I think that everybody's just really interested in the way they stay out of the limelight. It makes for kind of a cool story.
It does. I mean, and even outside of their Grammys performance that we've spoken about many times, when they collected their Grammys, they came up to the stage. They were in their robot suits. They didn't speak. And Nile Rodgers spoke for them and said, "Oh, the robots would like to say thank you," and all this kind of stuff. So they're in character the whole time. Yeah.
And I mean, I just think that for someone, I've never been a big electronic kind of house music fan in that sense. I mean, unless you count Cotton Eye Joe, but I don't know if that counts. It's like redneck Cotton Eye Joe. I really like that one.
And do you know what's funny is then about electronic music is that the more, I mean, I've played guitar my whole life, but the more I play guitar and the more I play in bands and the more kind of like guitar-based music that I listen to, and certainly that I play, I sometimes find the electronic sound appealing to my ear because it is so different to what I'm used to.
That's probably true because you're very saturated with, I imagine, a lot of rock music, Tim, considering what you play and where you go play out and things like that. So it probably just gives you a different kind of sound. To be fair, I love disco, and that is kind of a form of electronic music in a way. So. Sure,
but I mean, you know, when I think of disco, I think of the Village People and Gloria Gaynor and.
Me too.
That's what I think disco when you say disco, and a lot of disco again was real instruments, and plus you'd have like an orchestra playing like orchestral elements,
and it's just fun. But anyway, so that I agree with you, Tim. I think this is probably I'm not a huge Daft Punk fan in the sense that like I've really listened, but that album I've listened to front to back, sideways, many times.
Absolutely. So yeah, if you haven't heard it, go and listen to it. It's highly recommended.
Fair enough. I didn't know we were doing album of the day anyway.
Well, it's like album recommendation of the week. There we go.
It's just funny because we went, that's exactly how me and Tim would end every one of our albums of the week. Go listen to it. Anyway. All right. So what's our next songs about games?
Okay. So this would be from Foreigner, and this is the song Head Games.
Good choice. I keep waiting for keep playing games with my heart. I'm hoping it's there, but Tim keeps coming up with other songs. Just so I mean, Foreigner is obviously a band I think everybody's pretty familiar with, and this is not one of their, I guess, like, would you say that this is one of their major songs? I wouldn't say it's one of like their songs everyone knows.
Well, I mean, it's in the realm of the ones that, if you went to see Foreigner in concert, I'm sure Head Games features prominently in the set.
That's trure. I guess when I think of Foreigner, though, I just think of there's like a lot of other songs that come to mind, but that makes sense. Are they British? Is Foreigner British or are they American?
I think they're a British American band. I think Mick Rouse is British, who is the sort of primary songwriter, guitar player, and then the touring lineup of Foreigner now is really nothing to do with the original band, which you hear on the recordings.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know anything about a lot of the people in the band Foreigner. Like, I know who they are, and I've listened to their music, but I don't know too much about them. I mean, Ian McDonald, of course, but that's about all.
Mm-hmm. I almost went to see Foreigner in Finland.
Oh, that's random. I thought there was going to be more to that statement. He just stopped.
Well, what happened is that we found out that they were touring, and we saw that Foreigner were coming to Finland. Huh. And we were thinking of going to Denmark, to Billund in Denmark, which is where Legoland is. Now, not any of these pretend Legolands like the one in California or the one in Windsor, which really which used to be Windsor Safari Park. None of that business. The real deal Legoland in Billund in Denmark. We had this grand plan. We was going to go to Billund, go to the real Legoland, And then it wasn't where this place was in Finland was not that far. So we figured out how we was going to do it. And then we was going to go and see Foreigner. And we thought, what a great trip. What a random trip. Foreigner and Legoland. And we started making some plans. And then I applied for a green card. And then we had to save to move. And then it was like, oh, do you know how much this is going to cost? We really need to save to move. You do realize you're not going to be able to work for about 6 months, right? I'm like, ah.
Man, when you kept saying the real Legoland, all I kept thinking about is like the opening of that song. Doesn't it say, I don't know if it's real? Or something like that. I don't know if it's real. I guess the more you say it, Head Games probably is one of their more popular songs. It's just not the one that comes to mind when I think of Foreigner. But I don't know. I'm not trying to think of what this song in general. I mean, I just know it says Head Games over and over and over again.
Yeah, I always think of, when I think of Head Games, it makes me think of the cartoon Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that.
And there's an episode with the Moonanites that come down, and the plot is that they go to the Chuck E. Cheese, basically, and they get this special belt, the Foreigner belt, which gives you the superpowers of 70s rock group Foreigner. And then I think one of the Moonanites puts the belt on, and then he presses a button, and the neighbor Carl, he has like a Connect 4 game growing out of his head, and he's like, okay, who put this thing on Head Games?
You're right. Now that you said that, I remember that exact episode, and now that's all I'll ever think about when I think of Head Games. I mean, well, and like you said, aren't like 90% of the members, like, they're not the members anymore. Like, you go see Foreigner today, I'm not seeing Ian McDonald's and Mick Jones or anything like that. I'm seeing like random people. Yeah,
I think Mick Jones is mostly involved with it. But there are sometimes they go out without Mick Jones, even though he's a primary songwriter, primary guitar player, etc. But yes, the current touring lineup of Foreigner is not the same people who recorded the classic tracks that you know.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of Cold as Ice. It Feels Like the First Time, Hot Blooded. I think those are the ones that come to mind when I think of Foreigner, not Head Games for some reason.
Exactly. Check it and see.
Well, I will say Head Games is the album it's a self-titled album, right? That single and the album are named the same. Mm-hmm. There we go. There was, oh my God, speaking of Hot Blooded, I'm going to tell on the attempt slightly, just a little bit here. So right at the beginning of COVID, before anyone knew what COVID was going to do to us, me, Tim, and a few other previous coworkers may have gone on a very small bus and drove when we shouldn't have to go visit things we should. It doesn't matter. It's work related. We're not going to get into the detail. But
it was a train. We were making a training video on a public transit bus, but that's as far as we need to go with that.
Anyway, but the funny part is Tim was playing the guitar and I was singing, and then my previous boss, Angie, she was a great singer too, so we were singing. I remember at one point she yelled at me to stay on my harmony. It was really funny. But so Hot Blooded came on, so I was singing it very loudly, and Tim was like, maybe we shouldn't talk about people having fever. So 103. And I was like right before the cusp of COVID. Boy, were you all right on the money, Tim.
Yeah, Hot Blooded, check it and see. I've got a fever of 103. I think that is actually a COVID symptom.
It really was. And I was singing really loud, and Tim looked at me and went, maybe we shouldn't sing about people having 103 fever. Anyway,
needless to say, our training video was shelved and has never seen the light of day, because this was literally at the very cusp of when this stuff was kicking off, and we'd had this thing booked for a month or so, and we had all the resources in place, and we said, are we going to do this? And we're like, so we have nothing shut down, it's fine. And then when we was on the bus, there was like a phone call where somebody we worked with had COVID, and then from that point in, it was just everything just collapsed.
We got lunch and then went back and packed up all our desks and worked from home immediately after.
That's exactly what it was.
Like literally the day I'm sitting there going, hey, that wasn't. To be fair, it was really right before everything shut down, so we weren't prepared.
It was. It was. We weren't going against any regulations or anything like that. Everything was open. There was no mask. There was no nothing. It's just that it was funny. It was like that afternoon was at the very beginning of where we used to work. Started sending people home and the mask policy and all that. It happened like the afternoon of our jolly trip making a training video.
And I just remember the rest of us sitting back, driving back, and it was just kind of quiet. We're sitting there thinking, well. What now? Anyway, so that was funny, though. That's one of those memories that stick with me, because every time I hear hot blooded, I was thinking, maybe we shouldn't talk about people having fever. Anyway, the video of us singing is somewhere. I think Ross says he still has it somewhere hidden forever.
I've seen that. I know where it is. So I
heard it. We sounded good. Like, there's some good quality music on there.
Exactly. And every bus trip should have an acoustic guitar and people singing on it. I mean, why would you not want that?
I don't know. Anyway, so back to the podcast.
Okay, so we go from head games to a similar kind of game, this time by our friend John Lennon, and this is Mind Games.
Games. Good choice, Tim. I haven't thought about that song in a while either. You're hitting the random ones that are just... They're not like obscure, but they're not ones you hear every day.
Sure. We used to have Sirius Radio for a while, and 70s on 7 plays Mind Games about every fourth track.
Well, I do not listen to 70s on 7, so... but wasn't it like about him? So Mind Games was when he was really pushing his philosophy of peace and love. So it's something about like, he wanted to basically be a gorilla for peace or something like that. They keep playing mind games forever with the faith of the future, out of the now, that kind of thing. That was one of his really big pushes. How soon after that? So that would have been what, early 70s?
It was 1973. I think we lost Lennon 81, something like that.
It was early 80s, yeah.
I mean, I actually remember it. I remember it being on the TV news. I remember it very vividly. That, you know, they showed the footage from outside the Dakota building. I think it was on John Craven's News Round, which was a kids' news program that was on at like 4:30 or 4:45, and it was just before the main 6 o'clock news. So you'd have your kids' news, and then you went into the like adult news at 6 p.m. But I remember it being on there.
Have you visited the area in front of the where he was killed?
Yeah, I've been to the Dakota many times. It's opposite Central Park West, and on the opposite side of the road is the area of Central Park which is known as Strawberry Fields, and there's like a big mural there that says Imagine, and people leave toys and flowers and stuff like that. But it's probably an incredibly poor taste, but I have done the reverse John Lennon trip from outside the Dakota, where he pulled up in a cab and sadly his life was taken, and then we hailed a cab outside the Dakota and drove away. I think it wasn't deliberate. It was just we needed to get in a cab, and we was looking at the Dakota and taking everything in and taking pictures, and then we hailed a cab and I was pulling away. I was like, yeah, that probably wasn't a good thing
great.
Do. We should have walked around the corner to have some respect.
I mean, it is what it is. You're not the only person who's held a cab there, and that place has held a lot of famous people. Like Judy Garland lived there, obviously Yoko Ono and his son lived there. I think like the Clooneys lived there. It's a pretty famous apartment building, the Dakotas are. But I remember going I was at the tour, like one of those walking tours. And so they talked about it. They told us what happened. They pointed out which was his apartment and all that kind of stuff. And then I think we went directly across, like you said, to Central Park and looked at the little Imagine. I had everybody's flowers around it. People leave flowers there all the time.
Absolutely. I think Yoko originally had 2 apartments in the Dakota, and I think she sold one of them. I believe she still lives there, I think.
She does. Well, she did. I know I've heard she does. Now, to this day, I can't tell you, but I distinctly actually remember when I was going through the walking tour, it would have been in the 2000s, he put it up and said, and that's where she lives. Like, he put it at her apartment. I mean, how old is their son now? I wonder. He's got to be a full-grown adult.
Oh, I mean, Sean and I think Sean is younger than Julian, but I mean, Julian's probably older than me.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, I think Yoko's in her 80s at this point.
Yeah, I mean, John Lennon would be if he were still alive, too, so...
Yeah, makes you wonder when you hear music like Mind Games and stuff like that. You wonder where his music would have gone if he was still with us.
That would have been very interesting because he liked to take creative liberties, so I think it would have varied from year to year. But I think he could have been one of those people that could have continually had hits. You know what I mean? Maybe as he got older, they'd be less, but I think he could have been somebody who could have had hits at least through the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. Very sad. I still remember that time Tim told me that he was listening to Paul McCartney talk about gun violence, and he said, "Yeah, I lost a friend to gun violence." I thought that was. I remember you telling me that quote, Tim, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, the thing is about McCartney is that he's probably the most famous person in the world, and he has more money than you know what to do with. But you get the sense he's a little bit down to earth, and he didn't give it the big thing. Oh well, John Lennon, but it's just no, I lost. I think he even said my mate. He said I lost my mate to gun violence, so that's why I'm here at this march or something like that.
Smart. I mean, you don't think about it, but it's true. That guy's name was Mark Chapman.
Yeah, Mark David Chapman.
We're not going to talk about him. We don't give him credit. No. But anyway, all right. What's the next song? We literally didn't talk about the song at all, but it's a good song.
Okay, so let's go back to the song that maybe we can discuss this song. There you go.
Okay.
This is Peter Gabriel, and it's Games Without Frontiers.
Oh, okay. That's a good one, too. See, Tim's doing these songs that, I haven't thought about in a while, but I know they exist. It's almost like Tim gave it some thought.
Well, I gave it some thought in so much as I wanted to reference last week's disaster and come up with a different topic. So there we are. They came together. Well,
and James Without Frontiers has the little French version in it, too. There's multiple lyrics in it that are in French, right? That's the one? Games Without Foreigners? Isn't there a French lyric?
There possibly is. I don't know. I only know the English language lyrics, but it wouldn't surprise me. Maybe
I'm making that up. If you can Google that for me.
As we know, David Lee Roth recorded Eat 'em and Smile in Spanish.
How did you say Games Without, which is French for Games Without Fears? It's often misheard as She's So Popular. The song is about, there's a French line in it. And it means Games Without Frontiers, and it's often misheard as She's So Popular.
Oh.
There you go.
Well,
see, Tim, I'm not going crazy.
See, Peter Gabriel, he was artistic and into cool stuff, and he fronted Genesis when they were kind of a prog band. And it doesn't surprise me that he would have a French lyric in Games Without Frontiers.
And he can count 1, 2, and 4. Because that's what it says at the beginning of the song. No. Tim didn't even look at me like that. That's what the song, doesn't it go 1, 2, and 4? Doesn't he skip 3? Am I losing my mind here? Are we talking about the same song?
Yeah, Games Without Frontiers. Boom.
Yeah. War Without Tears, Game Without Frontiers, War Without. Doesn't he have a count in the beginning? It's a 1, 2, a 1, 2, 4.
Possibly. I listened to these songs when I built the playlist the other day, but I can't say is that I listened to the intro.
That's the only reason that the French sticks out to me is because Tim knows I took a lot of French, and I studied abroad, so French is important to me. But the 1, 2, 4, it's a joke because there's that one song with Bono where he also does that. They count, but they skip numbers.
Okay.
Okay. Well, anyway, Peter Gabriel, if you're listening, and would like to explain to me why you skipped 3, I'd be curious to know. That's the moral of this conversation. And if that's not in that song and I made that all up, sorry, guys, give it a goog. Swear he counts at the beginning and he skips 3. Doesn't matter. Anyway.
There we go.
I was right about the French, at least.
There we are. All right. Well, let's move on to another song. Maybe that probably contains 0 French this time. Ladies and gentlemen, I can
We're
confirm
counting.
that 100%.
Okay.
This would be from 1980. This is from the album The Game. This is from a bunch of people who, 2 of them came from Feltham. Actually, one came from Hounslow, one came from Feltham. And that would be Queen, and it's Play the Game.
Well, I can confirm there's no French in that one as well. This is one of their, 1980? Early 80s?
1980.
So, it kind of went around. It was kind of, everybody play the game. That's all I can say. Game of love. I don't know.
I can tell you that in the video for Play the Game, Brian May does not play his Red Special. He plays a very cheap satellite brand Fender Stratocaster copy.
Huh.
And the reason being is because Freddie Mercury tugs the guitar from him to steal it from him, and then he throws the guitar back to him, and then Brian May catches it and then plays the solo. And I'm sure he probably didn't want to do that with the Red Special.
Well, that's a smart move. I'll give him that one. I probably wouldn't want anyone to throw that either.
No, but as far as guitar geekery goes, I don't think I could geek out anymore with being able to identify what he was playing in a music video once.
I know how, like, I'm just like, everybody play the game of love. And Tim's like, yes, but guitars. Like, I'm just thinking about the song. That was one of their, like, I mean, it wasn't a major hit, but I mean, it plays on the radio fairly often. It's probably been used in movies.
Sure, and the live version from Montreal 82 is really good. Really, really good.
I don't know that I've ever heard it, but I'm going to have to go give it a goog after this.
Yeah, I would recommend the whole Montreal show. It was it was early 80s. I think it's at 82, I believe it is. And it was just before Queen got massive. And it was just before they started adding a keyboard player to their touring lineup, who was it used to be Fred Mandel, and later on it was Spike Edney. But before they had that. So it was just the core band. And it's before they had too many sort of 80s pop hits, when they still had that kind of more kind of 70s progressive-y type sound.
Let's say that was like another one, Bites the Dust, that really bass-driven kind of sound, right?
Yeah, I mean, another one, Bites the Dust, is in that set, but it's before they got into things like Kind of Magic and that kind of stuff. And it is just pure, unadulterated Queen. It is absolutely fantastic. And the performance is just great. And also, they filmed it on film. Now, the problem you have with a lot of stuff from the 70s and 80s, it was shot on video. And the quality of video at that time, even broadcast video, was relatively poor. But because it was shot on film, now when it's like put in high definition, because you actually have a film transfer, the quality is like amazing. So even you look like Wembley 86, that was shot on video, but it's 80s quality video, and it's
never good.
It never looks good. But Montreal in the 80s is just so crisp.
That's a good point. I'll have to go give it I keep wanting to say give it a go. But if you're playing the game right now, a drinking game, and I've said give it a Google like 17 times on this episode, you might die of alcohol poisoning. I would stop. I would stop while you're ahead. But because that would have been like right before they did Flash Gordon, same year.
Yeah, I think Flash is on the set for that. But yeah, it was certainly before. Maybe it was before the film was released.
Because that album's called The Game. And I still remember the reason I think of that album is because it was like you said, it was kind of when they were still in their, like, I almost think of it like a rockabilly feel. It's got a crazy little thing called Love, then they play The Game, and then another one, Bites the Dust, and they're all wearing leather jackets. So maybe that's strictly why I feel it's rockabilly, because they're wearing leather jackets and I'm stereotyping. But anyway. It
also does have one of my favorite Queen songs of all time, which is Dragon Attack. Dragon Attack just has such a good riff.
That's such a random song, but I've heard of it. You've told me a few times it's one of your favorites. It's kind of funky.
Yeah, it's big as and like Brian May's guitar break on it, his tone, the vibrato, the note choice, it just, you listen to it, it pops out the speakers. It is just, if you wanted to take like the raw, pure Brian May guitar sound, the Red Special, the Deaky amp, or the Red Special and the Vox AC30 with the Corniche treble booster, however you want to configure that stuff.
There's so many words of what Tim just said. I'm just like, yeah, what Tim said.
I think what I need to do one day is do a Brian May geek episode that's about 3 people are going to listen to.
It's just 40 minutes straight of Joy staring at the computer and Tim saying, so on this episode of this one, and then he was on this TV show for 5 minutes here, but then he played guitar over here. Oh, Lord. I mean, at least you know what you like. That's what we said. You like what you like. And Tim is just one of those people that when he likes something, he dives full into it and learns everything he can about it. The perspective I get.
My Googling of guitar stuff. I mean, I spend hours. I don't know, I just find it fascinating. You know, I love to play guitar, and I love to perform, and I love listening to music, and I love creating music. You know, like I've done my Knight Rider video and countless other ones I've done like that. I love that process and learning about how to do it and all that stuff. But equally, the gear fascinates me. And acoustic guitars, not so much. I have a vague knowledge of acoustic guitars. I have a Taylor, but it's not something that super interests me. But like electric guitars, I mean, I spend hours just looking at things and finding out about things, and it's an area that really does interest me.
Well, and I think that makes sense because you're interested in all the different sounds. And that makes sense of why you're such a big fan of Queen, too, because they're one of the most diverse bands I can think of that have done a little bit of everything. So if you're into the kind of, we call it nerdy, but like the music science of it, and how are they getting those sounds and how is that happening? That makes complete sense that you'd want to know what gear they're using because that can make all the difference. Yes, a talented guitar player, but you also have to take that in perspective.
That's true. I mean, for the most part, Brome's just played that same red special guitar his entire career.
Well, I mean, if it works, Tim.
That's true, but, I can get super geeky and tell you that One Vision was recorded on the 1984 Guild. But, I mean, I'm not going to go there.
Well, I mean, I still can't get over the day Tim's like, I bought the same clogs that he was wearing. And I was like, what? Anyway. So, there's that. So basically,
clogs are your tone talisman. Let me tell you that.
All right, Tim, what's another song?
Okay, so this is a classic one from the 50s, from 1958. This is bang up to date. And this is Tommy Edwards, and this song has been covered by many people, but this is the oldest version I could find. And it's called It's All in the Game.
Yeah, there's about 1,000 versions of this song.
Going through my iTunes library, I found about 5 or 6, but this was the oldest recorded version I could find. Maybe it's an older song than that, I don't know.
I mean, it's possible, but I will say that it's kind of a short song, isn't it? It's only got a few verses.
It's 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay, maybe I'm right. But I mean, he's talking about, his tears have to fall. It's all in the game. But I mean, it's one of those songs that I could see being used in movies too, probably a lot. That's probably why there's so many different recordings. Because the perspective I get, Tim, so we talked about like We're the Kids in America and stuff like that. There's like 17 versions. It seems like that comes to be because they want to put a different version in music and movies. And it's almost like they can't afford the original. Do you know what I mean? Like, honestly.
Sure. And then the other thing is that you get a contemporary artist to release it, and then it gets publicity around it, and they might release it as a single or it might appear on an album, and then the whole publicity machine carries on. But
I know a cool fact about this one. Mr. Thomas Edwards was the first African American to reach #1 on the Hot Billboard with this song.
Oh, well, there you go. Fantastic. Yeah.
I was watching it was kind of like a thing about, like we've talked about some of the whitewashing stuff, like one of those documentaries that I really like. And they talk about it. Yeah, this was one of the first song to reach #1 for an African-American man.
There we are. Fantastic.
Did you know that, Tim, or is that a new one for you?
That is a brand new fact for me.
And he's from Virginia.
Well, there we go. Look at that.
That's the only things I remember from that about him, but that's what they said. But yeah, I mean, he was probably, if I had to guess, he's probably like a lot of people who come up in that time, they probably started in the church.
Sure.
Yeah. But anyway, that's just a cool fact about him. And I don't know that he really had any other songs. Wouldn't know if it was on my head.
No, I don't know. It's just one of those iconic songs. And I thought, how can I have a game-themed episode without It's All in the Game?
Well, there's a Cliff Richard version, apparently.
Oh, for many, that must be the definitive version.
I just was looking to see how many versions there were. The first name that popped up to me. I like how I'd never seen the name Cliff Richard once in like the last 20 years of my life. But then as soon as Tim brings it up, I turn my eye and there he is on every record.
Let me tell you, do not mess with the Peter Pan of pop.
There's some Americans out there that are going, who is this Cliff Richard guy? Just give him a Google. You'll figure it out. Yeah, apparently it was Cliff Richard had a #1, #2 hit in the UK for him with this one. And then it was 25th on the US hit, his version of All in the Game. Or whatever. Yeah, that's All in the Game.
Marvelous. Good deal. All right. Well, let's move on to one more. I'll do... That's blah, 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 blah. Let's do 2 more. So this one is Swedish power pop, which is a specific genre of music which probably only one band fits into. I may have got that from an Alan Partridge episode. I may not. Who can honestly say?
Seems possible.
So this would be our friends ABBA.
course.
And this is the name of the game. But now, before we talk about this, I would also like to talk about the name of the game by ABBA. I'd like to talk about 2 cover versions. One is Nils Landgren's Funk Unit, who did a cover of the name of the game. And Nils Landgren they did an entire album called Funky ABBA, which is in like contemporary jazz, contemporary R&B covers of ABBA songs, which is kind of wacky. And some of the songs are a little bit out there, but a lot of it you listen to and you think, this is a good version of Super Trooper. I don't know. I like this.
Yeah. I mean, ABBA kind of has a funky sound you could play around with, so I get how that could work.
Sure, and they've toyed with the arrangements a little bit. They're not straight covers. So sometimes I pull out Nils Landgren's Funk Unit and listen to the funky ABBA album, and it's actually pretty enjoyable.
I know that the Fugees sampled them in the 90s. That Rumble in the Jungle song they did. Mm-hmm. It was one of the first times that ABBA had been sampled ever. And it's from this song. If you go back and listen to it, you'll have to give it a listen. It's called Rumble in the Jungle. I don't know. It's from like the early 90s. I like the Fugees a lot. That this is sampled in it.
Even before the KLF sampled Dancing Queen?
I don't know. Let's give it a Goog. Let me give you an official analysis. That's just what I've heard, everyone. I'm not Google.
Well, the KLF sampled Dancing Queen, but they didn't get permission, and I think it was like a bootleg or underground release.
There's your key. It says this is the first one that was legally sampled.
Oh, okay, yeah. The KLF got up to shenanigans, and they drove to Stockholm in the Ford Time Lord car, and it was a whole thing, but...
I had heard that, but I had never heard... Well, we've talked about the KLF before, we guess. This one is the first time they had been legally sampled.
Okay, so Benny and Bjorn gave their explicit permission.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty cool song, and they have that kind of funky sound the Fugees do, too, so it works. What was the other version you were going to talk about, Tim?
Okay, so let me tell you this story.
I should have known.
So I went to the MCEAP thrift store a number of weeks ago, and sitting there at a premium price, it wasn't 50 cents, it was $2. And $2 is being the more premium selection of compact discs in the MCEAP thrift. I never worry too much because those folks do really good work. So it could be $5 and I'd still buy it, doesn't matter. But they had an album by Cher called Dancing Queen. Now, this is an album from 2018, an entire album of ABBA covers by Cher.
So Cher was in the second Mamma Mia.
That's maybe where the idea came from. However, unlike Nils Landgren's Funk Unit, where they take the ABBA songs and they do something completely different with it, they move the arrangements around, and some of the songs are similar, but a lot of them are kind of, you have to listen for a while and you go, oh, that's whatever. This is straight covers. I mean, it sounds a little bit more up to date with the instrumentation, but as far as the arrangement and the sound, if you heard it casually, you'd probably think it was ABBA. However, I love Cher. Cher is great, and she's got that angry older lady all caps thing going on Twitter, which is hilarious. And she doesn't mess around telling people her opinions on various topics. But I love you, Cher. This is rough. So, firstly, they're all in the original keys, and Cher's got quite a deep, booming voice. Mm-hmm. So she's singing it down here, and it sounds weird. Some of the songs don't sound too bad, but a lot of them, she's going very deep with it to match the key, and it doesn't work. And then the other thing, she's got that kind of auto-tune thing, which she used on her song Believe, which is maybe a Cher trademark at this point.
She was the first one or whatever to do it or something like that. Yeah,
well, I mean, that Antares auto-tune plugin in Pro Tools, the idea is that you put it on a vocal and it just sweetens it ever so slightly. Especially with backing vocals, you want to tighten up your backing vocals, you put it through the Antares auto-tune plugin, well, certainly back then, and it just tightens the backing vocals. It just makes it sound nicer. What she did is she sung into it and then turned the intensity up to 11, and then it sounds like a robot, which has become one of her trademarks.
And she has a very distinct voice, so it works so well with the robot thing, I think. Like you're saying, she has a very deep voice. I mean, she can hit high notes. She's definitely I I mean, I wouldn't say she's an alto. I'd say she's probably like a mezzo soprano because she can do highs and lows. It's just the deep sound in her voice is very distinct. And I understand what you're saying coming across with ABBA, where it's kind of very light and airy.
Yeah, so I played it the other day, and Hannah said to me, she says, one of her famous quotes was, "Why does this exist? It doesn't need to exist. If I want to listen to ABBA, I'll listen to ABBA."
I would think it's because Cher was in the second Mamma Mia. She comes back as the girl's mother in the musical.
Okay.
So I don't know what year the second Mamma Mia came out, but you said what, 2018?
Yeah, this album is from 2018.
Let's see. Mamma Mia, everybody, I'm looking it up. Mamma Mia 2, 2018.
Ah, there we go. Joy is putting all the pieces together.
Yeah, and she sounds pretty good in the movie, but I imagine they expanded on the album, which she's singing more. Mm-hmm. She doesn't sing a whole lot in the movie. For those, spoiler alert, she comes back as like the grandmother because the mother dies that owns the little thing. Because I've seen Mamma Mia once in London. I remember this, but
New Year's Eve, in fact.
There you go. So the mother who was on there that owned the hotel thing, she dies. And so then in the second one, Cher comes back as her mother.
Okay.
I have to be honest with you, I didn't like the second one very much. I love the first Mamma Mia. The second one was meh. That's all I have to say.
Well, it's all of those things are the Benny and Bjorn Swedish krona printing machine.
Now, Meryl Streep's version of Money, Money, Money is fantastic. It is so good. I love that version of that movie. Everything about it. Great. 10 out of 10. Absolutely beautiful. Pierce Brosnan can't sing to save his life. Listen.
And he doesn't need to. I mean, he's Pierce Brosnan. He's a handsome chap. I mean, he
said, I'm not a singer.
Yeah, you don't cast him for his singing ability for things like that.
And he was wonderful. And they only gave him a few, like cute little things to sing here and there, Tim. But he was like, in production, he's like, don't let me sing. This is a bad idea. Anyway, but I loved Mamma Mia. But yeah, that's why Cher was in the second one.
There we go. You've figured that out for me. I still have it in my collection. I will continue to keep it in my collection. It may not get many repeated plays. I'm just saying, Cher.
Well, now you can tell Hannah why it exists.
There we are. Now I know. I will. When we finish this record, I'll wait for the files to finish, and then I'll go and tell her.
I know she's rushing to find out this piece of hot information.
And she's sitting down there watching anime or something. I don't know.
Listening to clapping songs.
Very likely.
All right, Tim. I think we got time for like one more song.
Yeah, one more. So this one is from the 60s. This is Dave Berry and the Crying Game.
Dave Berry and the Crying Game. I don't know that I know this song, Tim. How does it go?
In the Crying Game. No.
I mostly just wanted to get him to do that for everybody. but no, I don't recognize the song. But if you guys recognize it by Tim's wonderful rendition, please tell him.
No. All right. Well, I've got a spare one, Joy. How about this one? Joe South, The Games People Play.
I do know that one. That one's been covered before too, right?
Oh, sure. I mean, everybody's covered it. Yeah.
I think I've heard more of the covers than of his original, honestly.
Sure. I mean, it's a song from the 60s, and certainly even back in the 60s, songs are in the charts. Other people would cover them at the same time.
Yeah. I just remember he had very what I remember about what I've seen of Joe South is he had the Beatles haircut. Very distinct Beatles type haircut.
Yeah, I mean that was the haircut to have back then.
I like how that's what I remember about people, Tim. I remember their song lyrics and what their hair looks like. I don't know why, but when I say this, because when I think about music videos, especially in the 60s, a lot of their music videos were like Tim was saying, they're standard. They're just standing there singing. So there's not a whole lot going on around them. So I guess it's the hair that sticks out to me. Yeah,
and they weren't even real music videos as we know them now. It may be a Top of the Pops performance.
Or, I mean, that's basically what it was.
Or Old Grey Whistle Test, or there was a German TV show called Rock Palast. It might have come from that too.
Mm-hmm. Is he American or is he from the UK?
I don't know. Joe South.
Do you think that's his real name?
I don't know. I think you should break the news right now. I think the listening public need to know
Okay.
about Joe South. Okay, you should give it a goog, Joy. Give it a goog.
Okay. I'm looking. So his born Joseph Alfred Sauter. I don't know. It's not
Soda.
Sauter, something like that. And he was born in 1940, if anybody's wondering, because, we're hot off the presses here. He's from Atlanta, Georgia. So he is from the U.S. Country, folk, and rock is what he is known for, and he is a singer and a songwriter.
Well, there you go. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. We have breaking news for you from 1940.
Oh, that's cool. Apparently, South had his first top 50 hit in July of 1958 with a copper, that's not what it was, a cover version of the B-side of the Big Boppers hit Chantilly Lace, a novelty song. The Purple People Eater Meets the Witch Doctor. That's a heck of a song name. The Purple People Eater Meets the Witch Doctor. Was it from the One-Eyed Flying Purple People Eater?
Yeah, I think so.
Was that movie out that long ago? Wait, I have so many questions. Not that we have time for them, but I feel like the One-Eyed Flying Purple People Eater wasn't out that long ago, was it?
I think that was a song from back in the day.
Oh, it was a song before it was a movie.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, well, that makes more sense now. Tim just says it like I should have known. Of course. I remember one time when I was working at Kroger, and it was right around Halloween. They were doing like a Halloween type, every once in a while. I remember I walked in the store and I went, is the One-Eyed Flying Purple People Eater playing over the loudspeaker right now? And it was. And if you guys aren't familiar with that song, it's very fun.
There we go. And before we go, I'd just like to give a Chantilly lace fact.
Oh.
There is a bridal wear shop in Blacksburg where I work and where Joy used to work called Chantilly Lace.
There is. It's directly across. It's right by the McAdoo's.
There we are. And with that local news, we will say goodbye for this week. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
To find me out another day to